What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to Mental Rep. In today's segment, I didn't really know what to talk about. I feel like God gave something. He gave me something to talk about. In hindsight of Thanksgiving, I've seen a lot of information about Thanksgiving being Thanksgiving, and there was Thanksgiving Day massacre and this and that, the other woo woo. And, stuff like, oh, Thanksgiving is pagan, stuff like that. But come to find out, that is the farthest thing from the truth. That is not the truth at all. There was never a war or there was never a massacre on Thanksgiving. And there was never just a killing on Thanksgiving. There was no brutal slaughter of Indians on Thanksgiving. So if we go and dive deep into this a little deeper, there was two groups. There was the Pilgrims and there was the Puritans. They were both considered separatists. The Pilgrims completely separated from, I believe it's called the England Church. The English Church forced everybody to go to the English Church during that time. They wanted religious freedom. So the Pilgrims traveled to the Newfoundland. The Pilgrims traveled to the Newfoundland, arriving November 11th. Year 1620, and they had about 100 passengers, 102 passengers. Half of them died that first winter. So supposedly they had received help from I can't pronounce the word. These Native American names are too hard, but they received help from the Native American tribe, the Wampanoag. I don't know if I pronounced that, the Wampanoag people. And they learned how to farm and fish. And they also received more help. I think I've read something like they've met a Native American by the name of Squanto, who was an interpreter of the people of the Patuxet tribe. And I've also read from somewhere. Now, this is really gets a little confused because it says they had the first Thanksgiving with the Wampanoag, the Wampanoag people, but it also is somewhere else said that they had Thanksgiving with the Paconoet people. I cannot pronounce it, but yeah. The basis of me sharing that is that they had received help from the Native Americans, and I believe the first Thanksgiving that they had was in 1621, I believe. Yes, the first Thanksgiving that they had was in 1621, and they had it with the Native Americans. And they had the Pilgrims didn't have any issues with the Native Americans. Now, in 1630, which is 9 years away from the first Thanksgiving that they had, the Puritans came on the scene. Now, the Puritans were also separatists, except for they never left the Church of England. They thought that they can change it from within. Instead of being ye separate, coming out from among them, they thought that they can change this worldly system from within. So they came over to the Newfoundland and they had money. They weren't broke. They came with about 1,000 passengers. They came with money and resources and what some called a divinely ordained arrogance, or I call it pride. You can say pride, but I feel like that's opinionated. But I wouldn't doubt it. Supposedly about 10 years later in 1640, the Massachusetts Bay Colony was a Puritan stronghold of about 20,000 people. And the Plymouth Rock during that same time period was home to just 2,600 pilgrims. And eventually Plymouth was swallowed up by the Massachusetts Bay. Just a few decades later, I believe they came into a part of Massachusetts in 1691. So Plymouth Rock got swallowed up. Now, what people are getting mixed up is that they're getting these two groups mixed up. There's the Pilgrims who came on the Mayflower, and there was the Puritans who came about 10 to 9 years later. And when the Puritans came, they started trouble with the Indians. They had this divine, I guess, arrogance to forcefully try to get people to convert to Christianity. The Pilgrims never did that with the Native Americans. And the funny thing is, you can see the correlation of what they were persecuted for in England. And you see the whole reason for why the Pilgrims left. But the Puritans brought that culture of forcing this way of thinking over to the Newfoundland, forcing it on the Native Americans. So the same thing that they persecuted in England, they brought over here. which is funny because the Puritans tried to change it within, but it seems like they're the ones who changed. And honestly, I really don't even think that they ever changed. I really don't think that they ever really broke free from the Church of England. It was always in their hearts. And honestly, I think that they broke off into two groups just to try to interweave themselves so close-knit, so closely with the Pilgrims who broke free. Almost like the same thing that they do with the Republicans and the Democrat Party here now in America, where you got Democrats who are disguising as Republicans, and you got Republicans disguising as Democrats who changed the party from within. It's the perfect wolves in sheep clothing tactic. That's what it is. Just my opinion, so take it with a grain of salt.